Hello again. I really must get round to cancelling my subscription to New Scientist because it becomes more and more annoying each week. It's little but a constant barrage of climate change and COVID-19, mixed in, of course, with the usual denunciations of sexism and racism. This week's issue, though, is something else again. You can see it here, and there's a piece here, perhaps readers can see it. It contains an article on the cover advertised as being about racist medicine. Well, let's have a look and see what it says. Right, the author, Lael Liverpool, she's a black woman living in Berlin, who is apparently a trainee digital journalist. I imagine that trainee digital journalist is a bit like a cub reporter, you know, like Jimmy Olsen working for the Daily Planet in Superman. The piece begins by mentioning the recent scandal about the American National Football League. Viewers might remember black players with impaired cognitive function from all the years of having their heads banged during football games were assumed to be less badly affected than white people. And this is because it was thought that they started from a lower mental position to begin with. In other words, they were assumed to have lower mental abilities before they started playing football. So even if they were functioning at the same level as a white player, it was assumed it wasn't so bad for them because they were not so well endowed cognitively before they began playing, if that makes sense. This process is known as race norming. I'm sure I've done a video about this, some viewers might remember it. According to the article here, race norming was first established in the 1990s by psychiatrist Robert Heaton at the University of California, San Diego, as a way to try to account for the way African American people tended to score lower than white people on cognitive tests, which are commonly used to diagnose conditions such as dementia. Okay, there are 2 points here, one an error of commission and the other of omission. Race norming was not established in the 1990s. Indeed, it was on its way out at that time in many areas. It had been devised in the 1970s and used most famously for the General Aptitude Test Battery, which was an examination used in the United States to assess the suitability of applicants for jobs in both the federal government and a lot of private companies too. Jimmy Carter's administration was red hot on race norming, or within group score conversion, to give it its technical name. Another form of this test was used in the 1970s as well. It was the Wunderlich test, which came complete with ethnic conversion tables. This is the first point. To suggest that race norming was first established in the 1990s is completely untrue. As usual, I give a link in the description to this video so that people can check that for themselves. The second point about race norming, which Liverpool does not make at all clear, doesn't even mention it, is that the practice was devised to help black people by making it easier for them to get jobs. Their scores on intelligence and cognitive tests were in the 1970s and always have been lower than either white people or those of East Asian origin, which handicapped them in gaining employment, as well as getting into the best universities. The race norming was a way to make life easier for black people themselves. Mind, it also acted to make life more difficult for white people because many companies hired useless workers whose adjusted scores suggested that they were bright and capable. White workers had to help these diversity hires and sometimes essentially do their jobs for them, which didn't do very much for race relations in America. There are many bare assertions in the article, statements made which we are supposed to take on trust. Race adjustments are made in other areas besides that of cognitive ability. There are various biological differences, physical differences between people of European heritage and those of African origin. Liverpool writes about lung function, for instance. She says, lung function, it's how you can breathe, how deeply you can breathe, how hard you can breathe out, and so on, yeah, and lung capacity, that sort of thing. She says here, where are we now? The use of race adjustment in lung function tests can be traced back to the suggestion made by US physician and slaveholder Samuel Cartwright in the 1850s that black people had lower lung capacity than white people. That's quite sneaky, actually, to talk about the fact that a slaveholder believed this or that, as though it once invalidates the theory. She goes on to say that the American Thoracic Society, the medical association which deals with the chest and lungs, uses different equations relating to lung function depending upon a person's geographical ancestry. However, there are seemingly signs that they are beginning to repent of this racist assumption. The American Thoracic Society told New Scientist, there is increasing recognition that race and ethnicity are socio-political constructs which are more reflective of the differing social and environmental conditions across populations than representative of true biological differences. Well, that may or may not be true. The completely mad thing about all this, though, is that people with African ancestry do have smaller lung capacities on the whole than people of European heritage. This belief is founded not upon what an American slave owner said before the American Civil War, but upon a huge amount of research across the whole world. Whether the studies are conducted in America or Britain, Brazil, Africa or the Caribbean, the results are the same. People whose ancestry is from Africa tend to have lower lung function. I give links to 2 or 3 research papers in the description to this video, including one carried out in Brazil. It was rather dishonest of Lael Liverpool not to mention all this and to limit what she said about the subject to somebody who died 150 years ago, as though she couldn't find a more recent reference. Readers can easily find out for themselves about the history of race norming and also see the studies which have confirmed that black people tend to have poorer lung function than whites. Looking back to the cover of the magazine, we ask ourselves, is this racist medicine? In what way does this suggest that doctors are letting down black people? Liverpool may well be an excellent digital journalist, but I have an idea she'll be well advised to steer clear of writing about medicine in the future.